fundamentally, I make the games I want to play. And secondly, I'm super interested in designers like Vlada Chvátil, who make incredibly different games when what they do. And I think there's brilliant designers who work against the same game or the same idea, and they sort of smooth it in 2 different ways. But one, I think variety is really nice, and I'll learn more that way. But 2, earlier when I said I start from the experience, a lot of designers say, well, I love set collection or I love worker placement, and so they tend to work with that mechanism. And other designers say, well, I love this theme, I love space, I love monsters, and they'll go for that idea. And to me, I start from the experience, and so for Cry Havoc, when it started, it was just York, and this is 4 years ago now. I thought, well, I want to make a war game that works with more than 2 people, so it's 4 people going at it the whole time, and you're always invested in the game. So that meant I couldn't do player elimination, and I had to figure out how to do that. And I wanted to be a shorter game, and I was still new to the hobby, but a lot of the games I was looking at from, say, like GMT, which I like a lot of their games, but a lot of them are 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, and I thought, can I make a much shorter game, like an hour or 2 hours? And then the other thing is I thought, can I do it entirely card-driven? Again, back then, my thought was Risk, and Risk is dice, and so I thought maybe I could do something card-driven, and that seemed like an interesting situation to build around that was a bit more based on the experience, and then I sort of found different themes that would support that and different ways to do that. After I got that signed, I started working on Sol Rising, and I really wanted to make a space fleet game about commanding space fleets. And so I thought about formations. I was inspired by Homeworld, one of my favorite games growing up. I was inspired by the Expanse series of sci-fi. And then I thought about scenarios like with Memoir 44, and I thought, wouldn't it be really cool if the scenarios tied together? And then I found a little bit later that Memoir 44 has a campaign, but so I was inspired by that narrative story arc and finding a game that had a story arc that you didn't just read, but you were involved in, that you could affect. And then there's games like Hocus, where I was thinking about how I like poker, but I don't really like it. I don't really like playing it. And I thought, could I mix something that's sort of like Ascension or Magic the Gathering with poker? And I just started tinkering with the notion of poker plus spells. And that took me on a weird 2-year journey. And then Farmageddon was one of my first games, and I wanted to do something simpler. I was looking at, because I want to get started and it's too tough, and I was looking at, I was working in social and mobile games at the time, and I was looking at Farmville, and I thought Farmville really sucked. And I thought, can I make a better Farmville that's competitive with a card game? And so I just started from that premise, and in fact, I had the name before I had anything else. And I looked at some of the ideas of Farmville where you have to wait a certain amount of time to harvest things. Well, obviously I didn't want to have players waiting, so I took cards, which you draw over time, and use that as a way to determine when you can harvest. And so I sort of took those initial inspirations, but I want to be farming. I want to have an aggressive war game that's based on cards. I want to have a space fleet with a story that I'm involved in, And so I think about the experience, and I think of what would be fun to make, and I just sort of see where I go. I have recurring things. I love multi-use cards. I use that in almost every game I have, and I love interaction, and I love cards. I haven't made a game yet without cards. But to me, it's interesting to start from what do I want my players to feel and see what would be fun for them. And that way you can sample from worker placement, and you could sample from dice, and you can just sort of see where that takes you instead of being so tied to existing themes and such. It's kind of weird. I mean, I had 5 years of video game industry experience. I had an extensive experience before I started, so I had that really nice start that told me good design process, good production process, good testing, and the stuff I've learned, I've never really been burned by massive mistakes. I guess I would go back and tell myself to keep at it because, I remember I worked on Farmageddon for 14 months and it finally got signed, and after that I thought, okay, I've got this first one out the door, and I'm going to try to have a game signed every year. And there are some very frustrating times, like York's 4 years old and it's not out yet, and it's finally going to come out and it's going to be amazing as Cry Havoc, and it's going to be better than it's ever could have been. Sol Rising will turn 3 early next year, and I still don't have a home for that. It's sitting with someone right now, and maybe it'll go somewhere, and if it does, it would be massive. It would be worth every day. Hocus took 22 months of development, and it's a 100-card game. And so I guess the thing is, I am proudest of the things that I've dug in on, and I feel like just really, I think more people should spend more time in development. Give your games more time to grow, find out that special part, and don't just settle for the first cool thing that comes along. You know, really find that awesome thing in itself. I would tell myself to just keep at it and keep, you know, developing your games until they get somewhere cool, because I think it's too tempting to be like, well, this one works, I'm going to stop here. And I think, you know, really digging in and being stubborn, I think that's the best advice I can give myself and other people.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.